Hello, and welcome to Lab 10. Here we're going to look at the spinal cord and peripheral nerves. So in our first picture, here is a typical cervical vertebrae. Inside of this cervical vertebrae, we have our spinal cord. So this kind of gives a reference point to where everything is in relation to that vertebral column, that vertebral canal. So let's look at what we have here. In our spinal cord, it is made up of gray matter and white matter. That gray matter is going to be in the middle. It's kind of a butterfly shape, an H kind of pattern, whatever works for you to kind of remember which is which. This gray matter is split up into different sections. We have this anterior horn that I'm drawing in pink and this posterior horn that I have drawn in purple. Along the middle that crosses over to both sides, we have this gray commissure. And in the middle of this gray commissure, we have this little circle. And there, that is the central canal. Coming off of our spinal cord, we are going to have these anterior roots, and then we're going to have these posterior roots. They're also known as ventral roots and dorsal roots. The dorsal or posterior roots are our sensory information. So this is information that is going into that spinal cord. Sensory neurons keep their cell bodies outside of that spinal cord. So they are found in this dorsal root ganglion, which is found at this enlargement right around here. That is those dorsal root ganglion that contains all of the cell bodies of the sensory neurons as this information is coming into that spinal cord. Here we can see the different layers of that wrapping around that spinal cord. We have the dura mater, which is the furthest outside. So if we follow this dura mater, it's on that outside. So it's this outermost layer here is that dura mater. The next layer is going to be the arachnoid matter. We've got that labeled over here. And then we have our pia matter that sits directly on top of our spinal cord. We are going to have our anterior ventral or median fissure, which is this line that comes in the front. We know it's the front of the spinal cord because the cell body sits in front of that spinal cord. The spinous process is the back, so that is our dorsal side. So we have that dorsal or posterior median sulcus or fissure on that back side as well. the nerve that is coming off here, that is that spinal nerve. So let's go on to our next picture. Here's another picture of the spinal cord. So we can see everything labeled here. You have that posterior median sulcus, that anterior median fissure, that gray commissure found in the middle between the two butterfly wings that make up that gray matter. Here you can see that central canal better, that circle. That's a circle that travels down the entire length of that spinal cord. We have our posterior horn. We have our anterior horn. You see that dorsal root ganglion, that spinal nerve. Coming off, we see those dorsal or posterior roots, and then we see those ventral or those anterior roots. Now, if we travel down the spinal cord is made up of several different sections. We have this cervical plexus. The plexus is a bunch of nerves that combine, split apart, combine in somewhere else, split apart again. This cervical plexus is made up of nerves that are going to come around the neck. There's one specific nerve off of the cervical plexus. This one right here. That nerve is important. That is the phrenic nerve. The phrenic nerve here is the nerve that lets us breathe. That is coming off of that cervical plexus. The next plexus is the brachial plexus. Brachial means arm. So all of these nerves that are coming off here are going to go to the arm, both sides. Where these nerves come out is where it's considered to be that cervical enlargement. It's an enlargement because there's several nerves coming out at that area. So it's able to go down to our arms. We travel down here. We can see that brachial plexus again. Here we can see this sympathetic trunk that's listed here. This sympathetic trunk is a bunch of ganglia. There's one at every single level traveling down the spinal cord. Each of these ganglia here are where our autonomic neurons are traveling into that ganglia, and then they're going to leave that ganglia and travel where they need to go in the body. We have this autonomic or sympathetic trunk that travels technically the entire length of that spinal cord. Now, if we come down to the bottom of this model, we have our lumbar plexus. Our lumbar plexus has these nerves that are coming down in front of these muscles, that iliacus muscle that sits inside of that pelvis. This main nerve here is going to be that femoral nerve. We have our sacral plexus. That sacral plexus is going to actually travel down the back of the leg. The main nerve that comes off of that sacral plexus is going to be that sciatic nerve. That sciatic nerve is the one that goes down the back of the leg. The femoral from that lumbar plexus goes down the front of the leg. So let's look at nerves as they travel off that brachial plexus. Now we're getting into our nerves of the arm. So the nerves that we need to know is that musculocutaneous nerve. That musculocutaneous nerve here is going to travel between this biceps brachii and brachialis. So it's going to come down through here between these two muscle groups. Here we can see that median nerve and that ulnar nerve, even that radial nerve. That radial nerve here kind of dives deep. Let me get a pen. This one dives deep down and it's going to go underneath the arm. It's going to come down here. We can't see it because it's underneath the triceps muscles. This ulnar nerve is going to travel down this way, and then that median nerve is going to travel down the other side. That ulnar nerve is the nerve that travels down and goes underneath that elbow. So when you hit your elbow and you hit that funny bone, you're hitting your ulnar nerve. So we continue to follow our nerves down. That radial nerve is going to come out and it's going to go down that thumb side because it's following the radius. That median nerve is going to come down that middle. Median travels down the middle. And then that ulnar nerve. That ulnar nerve is going to come down, dive through here, and it's going to come down up following that ulna on that pinky side. Now, if we look at, we only have this model that shows the back of the leg, so we're seeing the sciatic nerve just above the back of the knee. That sciatic nerve is going to split off into that tibial nerve and that common fibular nerve. So we follow that tibial nerve is going to stay going down the back of the leg. That common fibular nerve is going to dive off to the outside of the leg and travel down that fibula. So it allows those nerves to kind of feed those different areas. This model doesn't show it, but going down the front of the leg, again, we have that femoral nerve that we saw up in this picture that I drew. This will continue to travel down the front of the leg. Here you can see it come out this way. We've got different muscles in different areas hiding things, so we can't see really well because here we have that psoas major coming down, hiding some of these muscles. So that's where you get that femoral nerve versus this side that psoas major is not there. So you can see how it's traveling down that iliacus on top of that pelvic bone. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and thank you very much for listening.